What if the people around you could hear your thoughts? Imagine with me for a moment, imagine what if the people around you, even in this place or as you go about your business out in the world, what if people around you could hear your thoughts? The things that you tend to want to keep to yourself, they're actually coming through in other people's heads loud and clear. They know what's on your mind. They know what's on your heart. They know what you are valuing in that moment. They know exactly what you think of them. What if they could hear your thoughts? It is an uncomfortable thing to try to imagine, isn't it? To try to think about our giving somebody full, unedited access to what's going on within us. We live kind of carefully curated lives so that others see only what we let them see as much as we can allow that. And we can be threatened by having that kind of vulnerability where somebody might actually know what's really inside. And we might wonder, if we really think about it, even the people that we're closest to, if they knew what was really inside of us, would they still love us? Would it change things? Would they know, would that knowledge change how they feel about us? It's interesting to consider. Because the reality is that love and genuine connection actually requires at least some level of vulnerability. Some level of allowing people in to be truly seen and to be fully known is what it is to be truly loved. Now we flip that around. What if I told you this morning that the God of the universe wants to be truly known by you? He wants to let you into His heart, to know what's going on in His will, His priorities, the things that He cares about. He wants to let you into that. He wants to have a closeness with you of an authentic, loving connection. This morning we're starting a new series that I'm calling After God's Heart, which has a couple of ways of meaning, a couple of levels of meaning in the phrase, after God's heart. We recognize that we are people that are in pursuit of, we are after God's heart. We are seeking after Him. We are in pursuit of Him. Not really to gain His affections, because He already loves you more than you can ever imagine. But we are in pursuit, we are after His heart because we want to know the heart of God. We want to know His heart. We want to draw near to the God of the universe. And to do that, in this series, what we're going to be doing is looking at one who was described in the Scriptures as a man after God's heart. A man you know of as David. Today we are going to look at the very first time that David shows up in the story of Scripture. Other than the genealogy at the end of the book of Ruth, this is the first time that David is introduced to us in 1 Samuel chapter 16, which I had no idea that Terry was going to be talking about in the communion time. It is a great little overlap there. So we're going to be looking at 1 Samuel, for the most part, 1 Samuel chapter 16 this morning. Before we get to that, years earlier in the story, Israel had demanded a king. They had seen the stability and the power of the nations around them, and they thought, well, maybe it's their government structure that provided it for them. We want to have a king just like they do, and so they asked God for a king. They wanted to be like those nations, and so God gave them a king named Saul. And Saul's reign had started well in some respects, but as it went on, Saul was undone by his pride. Saul was he was the guy that you would look at physically and you would think, man, this is a guy who is commanding the room. He is a guy that has a physical presence. He was very tall and powerful, and he had that kind of authority kind of built into just his stature. He was what people would have wanted to have as their king. And maybe it was all of that praise, all of that people thinking he was great that got to him because he had ambitions that were driven by his bravado. And it led to some erratic behavior as his reign went on. And as we come to this part in the story, things have started to fall apart for Saul. The threat of the Philistines is looming. The king has become more and more erratic, and the prophet Samuel, he's getting older, and he has been told by God that he is taking the kingdom away from Saul. And Samuel is grieving because he knows what Saul perhaps could have been. And Samuel's grieving what is not coming to be in Saul. And so that's where we pick up the story here at the beginning of 1 Samuel chapter 16. When the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I'll send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I've provided for myself a king among his sons." The time has come, God says. The time has come to follow through on what Samuel had been inspired to tell Saul just 3 chapters earlier. Saul had become impatient and prideful, and he had acted hastily and done things that he shouldn't have done, and he offered a sacrifice that he was supposed to wait for Samuel to come and do, and it wasn't just that. That was just kind of the final straw. And then if we back up to 1 Samuel 13, Samuel is inspired to tell Saul, "The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people." He's telling Saul, your time is short. It's being taken away from you. God has chosen someone, a man after his own heart. We notice that God takes the initiative. He's the one that says, "I have chosen for myself a king, and it's a person after my own heart." Israel had been chosen to be the people that were tasked with bearing God's name for the other nations to see what this God was like. And so for them to do that, they needed leadership that would show God's character to them. And so God chooses someone that is after his own heart. And so what do we mean by David, who actually hasn't been revealed that it's David yet in the story, but we know the answer. What do we mean by David being after God's heart? And we could say, well, it's David is in pursuit of God's heart, and maybe there's something to that. But I think that what is being communicated here is that David is a reflection in many ways of what God is like, God's character. In my house, there's a lot of times we do weird things. Everybody does weird things in their family, right? So sometimes there's just a sound that happens. A chair gets dragged along the floor and it makes a certain, and somebody then pipes up and just tries to hum to match the tone of the thing that we just heard. Does anybody else do that? Or the microwave beeps, and so somebody's like tries to match the tone. I don't know why we do that, but sometimes we do that. You want to resonate with the sound that you hear and prove that you know how to make that sound yourself. Maybe I'm sharing too much, but we got to open up and just be. And I think that David is being described as someone who resonates with the sound of God. He hums that tune, so to speak, and his heart is very much like God's heart. It doesn't mean that he's perfect, but he resonates on the same frequency. David's going to make mistakes. We're going to see that as we go through this series. But even in the midst of his mistakes, we can find God's heart vibrating through David's life. to see what God values, to see what God pursues. We can see some of the things that David pursues and values, and we can see reflections of God's will and purpose. And so God has told Samuel, now's the time. Let's go find him. And he sends him off to the household of Jesse, and Samuel goes up to the household of Jesse, and he says, okay, I'm here to offer a sacrifice, and I'd like to invite you and your sons to come to the sacrifice with me. And we get to verse 6 in the story, and this is where we really begin. When they came, that is when Jesse and his sons came, Samuel looked on Eliab, who is the oldest of the sons, and he thought, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I've rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. So we can gather that Eliab, the oldest of the brothers, probably had an appearance something like the type that Saul had had. He was somebody who was imposing physically, somebody that was old and kind of had that leadership quality about him when you looked at him from the outside. David hasn't even entered the story here, not yet, but we already learned something about God's heart in this part of the interaction. In the lead up to David coming into the story, we find out what God cares about, what God looks at. That last sentence, the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. So our first point this morning is, while human love tends to look at the surface, God's love looks all the way to the heart. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we try to carefully curate what people see and hear on the outside about us. We want our hair to be a certain way. We want our clothes to have a certain appearance. When we take pictures of ourselves or other people take pictures of us, we want to make sure that if we're going to be tagged online in those pictures, that those pictures look good. Maybe we apply some filters to them so they clean things up a little bit, or we make sure that we take them from flattering angles. Why do we do that? Because we know from experience that that's how people judge one another. We look at the outward appearance. Many times when we know better, we still get persuaded by the outward appearance. And you got to wonder, I've wondered this before, does anyone know who we really are? As much as we curate our outward appearance to appear a certain way to people, do people around us really know the true us? Do they know who we really are? I have in my office a rock on my desk. It's sort of similar to one of these. And you look at these rocks, and they just look like these lumpy, dirty, ordinary rocks. There's nothing particularly remarkable about them, but these are rocks that are called geodes. And if you crack them open, you discover, this is an example of an amethyst one, but you crack them open, you discover all of these crystals inside some of them can be quite beautiful and can actually be worth some money. I mean, these can be very cool, but you wouldn't know it just looking at the outside if you don't know what to look for. These things, what is valuable about them is what is on the inside. God knows what's inside of you. God knows what's inside of you, no matter what the outside looks like. No matter how much we curate our appearance, God knows what's inside, for better or worse. Right? If everyone else around you can't get past your appearance in some way, just know that God sees. And so Jesse, the Bethlehemite, kind of brings his sons in front of Samuel and starts with the oldest and begins to work his way down. And they, more or less, one way or another, they parade themselves through before Samuel. And God says no to each one. Samuel looks at them, and maybe this is the one. God says, nope, that's not the one. And as I read that story again, I was wondering to myself, God knows which one he's chosen. And God sent Samuel, he gave him enough details to say, go to Jesse in Bethlehem. Why not just go ahead and tell him the name of the person that he's chosen? Like why not just say who it is? You ever wonder that? Why put Samuel and Jesse and all the brothers through this process of saying, is it him? No. Is it him? No. Is it him? No. Is it him? No. Why go through all of that? And I think that it's because he's not just wanting to show them the one that is, he wants them to learn something from all the ones that are not. Because he's allowing them to think maybe it's this one. It's basing it on some of their appearances and the things that they think make for a good king or their status in the family or something like that. And God wants to say on each one, that's not what I'm looking at. That's not what this is about. That's not what I'm looking for. And so the older brothers may have had the silhouette of Saul. They may have looked like a warrior. But God was looking for something else. And Psalm 21, verse 2, every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. And so even Samuel, the prophet of God, he thought with his eyes, he judged, Eliab, surely this is the one. But the Lord weighs the heart. God evaluates the true substance of our motives. He sees the things even within ourselves that we hide from ourselves. There's things about you that you don't realize. God sees those too. And so only He can properly evaluate us. We can't even fully properly evaluate ourselves. Only He can evaluate us and judge us truly. And only He can come within us and shape us in the way that He intends. So we fast forward in time and we come to the book of Romans, and Paul is talking about something like this as well. And he says, likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We don't know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groanings that are too deep for words. And look at this. He who searches hearts knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. There's so much in that little passage there. But I want you to just notice this morning, God's Spirit searches within you. The Spirit that dwells within you also intercedes for you and articulates your pain when words fail you. He knows what you need better than you do. He knows what's going on within you better than you do, and He can search that out and bring that before the Father on your behalf. That's amazing. That kind of blows my mind to consider, really. So He can provide what is needed. Your God can provide what is needed even when you don't know what to ask for. And so I with that in mind, sometimes, this is sort of a side note, but sometimes I will have prayer times where I don't say anything. Just sit and acknowledge that I don't know what to pray for. And sit in that moment and allow the Spirit to do His work of searching and interceding from within. Your God knows you. He sees you deeply. And He loves you. That's the most important thing you need to know when you recognize that God searches within you. And I asked you at the beginning, what if others could hear your thoughts? And He can. And He loves you. Even the thoughts that you wish that you didn't have, He loves you. and He'll work to transform you from within. Because God looks deeper than we do, He sees the people that we're prone to overlook as well. That's the next place we go. God seeks out those that the world often overlooks. God seeks out those that the world overlooks. Maybe you've experienced being overlooked yourself. And I bet we've all overlooked a few people in our paths. Maybe without even realizing it. But God seeks out those that are overlooked. Have you ever assembled something, maybe some furniture or some appliance or something, and you get to the end of it, and there's some pieces left over? And you're just wondering, well, maybe the company sent me some spare parts in case something was broken or I lost a screw or whatever, and so these are just extra in case I need it. But in the back of your mind, you're going to hang on to that just hoping that that's the case, and it's not that there's some internal structure that was necessary, and the whole thing's going to collapse because you overlooked this piece. Is it essential to the integrity of this thing? I was working on my lawnmower the other day and had taken some pieces apart and put it back together, and I had a piece that I was like, I know this came off of there, and I had to figure out how to put it back. It was overlooked. As Samuel looks over the sons of Jesse, he recognizes that there is a spare part missing. As Jesse and Samuel are in this building project for God's kingdom and what He's going to do, there is a piece missing, and so Samuel is going to address that. Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, and Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." And Samuel then said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" And Jesse said, "Well, there remains yet the youngest, but look, he's keeping the sheep." Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and get him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." I read that, I wonder how long they were standing. David's been left out in the field. I mean, you figure, put yourself in Jesse's spot. Somebody's got to watch the sheep. It's unlikely to be David. He's the youngest. Surely he won't be missed. He won't be needed. And in fact, that word, the youngest, what it literally means is smallest. It literally means smallest. And it's a word that is not always about stature. It's not always about age. It's a way of expressing the one who is the least significant sometimes, which usually was the youngest in the family, which wasn't meant to be insulting. It's just the way that things worked. They had the lowest social value in the family. So surely he could be left out. But Samuel says, no, go get him. And I wonder what everybody was thinking in that moment. Go get him? What about the rest of us? What about all these 7? I mean, we've presented some pretty good options here, Samuel. Why do we need to go get the least significant person in the family? God seeks out those that the world often overlooks. Nobody showed us that more than Jesus himself. As he went about in his ministry and he actually made physical contact, he touched the lepers and the blind. As he sat around a dinner table with both tax collectors and Pharisees. As he assembled a team of misfits in many ways to be his core 12 guys that were going to turn the world upside down with the gospel. He showed us what it looked like to seek out those who were overlooked. In the church that he founded, it became the most radically inclusive group that the world had ever seen. Social hierarchies and ethnic distinctions just fell to the ground in the church when it was established. Because anyone and everyone who came to Christ could be transformed and brought into the one and same body of Christ. And by the way, there are no spare parts in the church. Every part is needed. And so Paul reminds the Corinthian church in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, he says, "Remember, dear brothers and sisters, that few of you were wise in the world's eyes or powerful or wealthy when God called you. Instead, God chose the things the world considers foolish in order to shame those who think they are wise. He chose the things that are powerless to shame those who are powerful. God chose things despised by the world, things counted as nothing at all, and used them to bring to nothing what the world considers important. As a result, no one can ever boast in the presence of God." It's very humbling to recognize what we were called from, but he gives us a worth beyond all measure in doing so. And so back to our story, David finally enters into the story. He says, the youngest is missing from the group. He's out tending the sheep, but Samuel says, "Go get him." David finally enters the story, smelling like sheep. He's summoned from the pastures to go and stand before God's prophet and to be evaluated. 1 Samuel 16:12, Jesse sent and brought David in, and we get a description of him. He was ruddy, had beautiful eyes, he was handsome. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." It's an interesting thing that we get some physical description of him, after we've already talked about how the outside appearance doesn't matter. God is looking to the heart, so why did we get this description of him? It creates a little bit of a tension in the text. But we get this description of David. By the way, ruddy is a way of talking about the complexion of his skin, to say that he had a healthy look to him. He looked like he was somebody who took care of himself. He was healthy and youthful, and he had nice eyes, and he was a handsome guy, even if he was small. He's healthy and handsome, but we're told this stuff before so that when we get to this part, we understand that that's not why he was chosen. That's not why he was chosen. He was chosen because he was a man after God's own heart. Put yourself in David's sandals for a moment. Imagine what it is like to make the transition in this scene. To go from being out in the quiet hills with just the audience of sheep into this moment of what seems like some tension in the house. As he enters into the room, perhaps walking past these 7 brothers who have already been evaluated and found wanting, David has been summoned in from the field and he walks past them. What's the expression on their face? Do they wonder why he's here? Is everyone in the room staring at David, this young shepherd boy? What's the look on Jesse's face? Is it one of confusion? Jesse was the one who made the choice not to call him in to begin with. And now here he stands in front of the famous prophet Samuel, unwashed, unrefined, and the center of attention in this moment. And I think about the way that God invites us to draw near to him. And we might have the feeling that we've got to clean ourselves up first. I've got to make myself ready to go before God, but we forget that's exactly what Jesus has done for us. He has done the cleansing. And so as God invites us to draw near, to experience being fully known by him, we could feel the tension of going in and being vulnerable before him as well. But to truly know God's love calls for the courage to be fully known by God. That is to say, to be vulnerable before him. To open ourselves to our God, knowing that he already knows us inside and out. But will I be vulnerable before him? We're going to see as we go through this series, we're going to see how David shows that vulnerability in his life. He has a closeness and intimacy with God that we should aspire to. Imagine for a moment Jesus himself showing up to your house. Coming over, perhaps unannounced. Maybe he gave you some notice ahead of time he was coming, but he shows up to your home. Would you want to thoroughly clean up the house first? You want to make sure that if there's any dishes that are in the sink, you got to get those washed and put away. Maybe you've got a pile of laundry in the bedroom. You want to get that taken care of. It's a good time to vacuum and scoop the cat box and all the things that you got to do before somebody comes over. If Jesus comes over, do you feel inclined to do that? Maybe you're going to close some doors. You can come in the living room, but don't go in there. Maybe there's some things that you think you've got to gather up really quick and throw them in the trash before he sees them. This is metaphorically speaking, of course. But could we have the intimacy to allow him into our messy kitchen and our cluttered bedroom? Could we allow Jesus into those spaces that we hide from people? Later in his life, David would write this in Psalm 139. He'd say, "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down. You're acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether." David became very aware of how well God knew him. And perhaps he was that way because he became aware that God had chosen him before Samuel showed up. That word, you searched me and know me, you search out my path, in the Hebrew is the word hakar, and it has this meaning, it's kind of associated with mining. It's about doing this meticulous excavation where you dig down, the miner digs to try to find the precious metals that are there. Hakar, to search and dig. He says, God, that's what you're doing with me. You're mining me deep within. Sometimes we can hold love kind of away from us at an arm's distance because we don't want to be fully known. We do that with each other, and we do that with our God sometimes because being fully known is scary. Allowing someone, even God, to dig deep within us is scary because to go back to where we started, what if they discover the things that are in there that we keep hidden and they discover things that they don't like, and what if they end up rejecting us because of it? But recognize this, God isn't digging for dirt to shame you. God is mining for treasure to restore you. God is seeking the good that he has made you to be and drawing that to the surface. Yes, there are things to clear away, but he's seeking the treasure within. When David stood in that room, he allowed himself to be seen, to be examined by Samuel, to be examined by God, and for everyone to find out if he was the one that was chosen. And when he did, when he was seen and chosen, something miraculous happened. something beyond being given a crown that was to come in his future. Verse 13 tells us this. Samuel took the horn of oil and he anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. Then Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David in this moment of being anointed. That word rushed upon is the Hebrew word tzalak. Tzalak. And what it means is to break out or to break through. It's kind of it's almost like a violent kind of word in just its kind of abruptness. You can imagine a strong wild animal that's caged and it just busts out of the gate. That's the imagery of the word to describe the way that the Spirit of God rushed upon David. And so we see within this a power of God that is beyond David. David may be the smallest of the bunch, the youngest of the bunch, what everyone would have thought was the least qualified of the bunch, but he has something in this moment that nobody else has. The Spirit of the Lord bursting out upon him. And it says it was this way from that day forward. David would not be the same after this. He has this power that sustains him, this power that is beyond himself. And consider this for a moment. That very same Spirit, not a different one, that very same Spirit that rushed upon David, if you're in Christ, dwells within you. Same Spirit dwells within you, brings that same power to you, sustains your life by God's strength. And so being chosen and loved by God infuses our lives with His sustaining power. And what's even more amazing, consider this as well. That Spirit that rushed upon David, now we have the indwelling of the Spirit, so a deeper level even of what rushed upon David, that Spirit dwells within you day by day to carry you through, to guide you. So being chosen and loved by God infuses our lives with His sustaining power. And after this, as Terry pointed out, David went back to the fields. He's going to continue watching the sheep. He goes back to ordinary life. But he's not the same David. He carries that sustaining presence of God, the Spirit's power. He carries that into the mundane, everyday activities that he does. And again, you do too. You carry the things of God with you into the mundane daily realities of life. Whatever you face, big or small, you face that with the strength that God supplies. You are not alone. You're never alone. In Zechariah 4, this is after the exile, and the people of Judah are coming back, and they're rebuilding the temple. But the governor of Judah, Zerubbabel, they're wondering they're running out of supplies, and so he is told by Zechariah. It says this: "The word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord of hosts." And you can imagine Zerubbabel, what are we going to do? How are we going to accomplish this? You ever said that about something in your life? What am I going to do? How am I going to accomplish it? And I think the word of the Lord can come to you as well, and it's not by might nor by power, but by His Spirit. There are things in life that are too much for our own strength, that are too much for our own worldly wisdom to try to sort out. We rely on the strength of God. That doesn't mean that things will unfold the way that we expect or the way that we want them to, but it means that we don't operate merely by our own power. What would you do differently if you relied more fully on God's power and God's strength than your own? I think we could reframe our everyday responsibilities to see them as opportunities for light to shine into darkness wherever we are. We could learn to respond to criticism, respond to conflict with grace and with strength that we don't have from our flesh. We could turn to God when we face a temptation that seems to be beyond our willpower to resist. It can remind us to lean into Him. We can learn to practice generosity, knowing that we are operating from God's abundance rather than human scarcity. And so what would happen? What would you do differently if you relied more fully on God's power, that Spirit within you, than your strength alone? We want to be people after God's heart. We want to be people that are pursuing our God, that want to know Him. But we want to be people also like David who are reflective of God's heart. That when people look at us, when they interact with us, they see God's character coming through us. Even when we make mistakes in the ways that we respond to them, they see God's character. In the coming weeks, as we get into this series, we're going to see more of David. He's only just entered the story, but we'll see him more and more in the weeks to come. We'll see how he reflects God's heart in his difficult and tumultuous rise to the throne that he's already been anointed to. And we'll see how once he gets there, he continues to show God's character in his reign, in the good times and in the bad times, even amidst significant personal failures. We'll see that shine through. And so may we draw near to the God who sees us and who knows us fully. May we embrace the love that He has for us, and may we allow that love to shape us from the inside out so that we have hearts like His. And may we find renewed strength so that we can face whatever life gives us as we are known and as we seek to know Him. This morning, if we can be there for you, we would love to be. We have the next song is called an invitation song, and if you are ready to be baptized, you want to become a follower of Jesus, we would love to baptize you today. Or if you just want to talk to somebody, or you have questions or want to pray, we would love to do that as well. I'll be in the back of the room during the next song with the elders, and we invite you to reach out during that time if you have any needs at all. Let's conclude with a couple of more verses from David's psalm in Psalm 139. And then we'll sing. Psalm 139, verse 23. David invites God. He says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me, know my thoughts. And if there is any grievous way in me, lead me in the way everlasting." If we can be there for you this morning, would you please reach out as we stand and sing?